Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a live That Christian panel on the program with Keri Smith. I'm Keri, and we've got some great panelists here tonight. We are going to be discussing redemption, which seems to be on a lot of people's minds lately with a lot of very public conversions and redemption stories. Thank you guys for being here with us. Before we get into it, why don't we go around and introduce ourselves for anyone who's new, who may not be familiar with us. Michelle, want to say hello? What's going on with you?
They might not notice me in my sportswear tonight, but it's good to be here. I think no, I made the last one. Yeah, I made the last one. I missed
Mhm.
the one before, but always enjoy doing these. I think these are. I don't think these are always relevant conversations and needed conversations. So glad to be here discussing this tonight.
I'm glad to have you. Were you at the gym?
I was at the gym.
Yeah. That was going to be me last night on Toxic Femme, and then it got canceled. So I was super sweaty. I was like, I'm here. Oh, it's not happening. Well, welcome. Brahma Bull looking dapper as always.
How's it going? Yep. Yeah, I love doing these shows, and yeah, Wednesday's usually my busy day, but we don't have yelling at parked cars tonight, so it'll be
Oh,
it'll be a light Wednesday for me. So looking forward to that.
very nice. And then we have special guest Shagsworth. You guys might recognize him. He's been on Deprogram before. I've been on his channel. Shags, how are you doing?
I am doing well. Thanks for having me on. I like watching this show from time to time when I have the chance because I'm unlike you guys. I guess I was described pre-show as a heathen. Um, so, but I enjoy taking in alternative perspectives on things. I like to interview people who do not share the same ideologies as me. I'm starting to dabble in that a little bit on my podcast. If you're not familiar with my channel, I do a show called Ready, Set, Shag, where I interview people one-on-one, people I like, people I want to get to know. Keri, you've been there before. Brahma, you're coming up. And Michelle, I'd love to have you on sometime as well. Um,
Yes.
but I like engaging with people on conversations. And this show is definitely one that I've been waiting to discuss. And this topic is great. It's something that I've followed and commented on recently. So thank you for having me.
Well, we're glad to have you. And we're a panel of people who happen to be Christians. We have special guests and everyone's welcome in the chat. You don't have to be a believer. If you have questions, there are no dumb questions. As long as you're coming with good faith, you can ask whatever you want. And we welcome everybody here. So we are also, I think Odin is going to be joining us from OMB Reviews, but let's jump into it. We have seen a number of pretty high profile conversions in the past couple of years. There are a couple I did not mention in the show description that come to mind, and some that people reminded me of. Kanye West being a big one a few years ago. Um, Also, Ayan Hirsi Ali, who wrote, famous atheist who wrote a whole letter about why she's now a Christian. And then most recently, the ones I've seen causing the biggest brouhaha online have involved some former OnlyFans, porn stars like Nala, who said she gave up OnlyFans for Jesus and has been, I would say, very thoroughly criticized and used
Mhm.
for all kinds of YouTube content and commentary. Another is Kat Von D. Another, most recently, Russell Brand, who just got baptized. And so, as these things are, since these are people all in the public eye who are sort of sharing what's happened to them, how they've changed their beliefs, how they found God with the public. Obviously, it creates a lot of public commentary. And I guess let's just get into it. One of the things I've been seeing is in some of the comments, people seem to come in. There are some people who are coming in with a completely distrustful, 100% skeptical view. Have you guys noticed that as well, or is there more nuance to that I'm missing?
No, you pretty much nailed it.
Yeah.
I think due to their past, yeah,
Yeah.
people have been highly skeptical, at least online.
Mhm.
And hopefully the audio is fixed now because I was told that the men are too low.
Yeah.
You sound a little higher, so it's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I've certainly noticed people who have said, "No, I'm just discerning and I'm skeptical, but I hope it's true." And that's sort of, you know, I don't have a problem with that. I think we should all be very discerning. But some of the things I've noticed go way beyond being discerning or skeptical and waiting to see fruits. They sort of out the gate saying, this is a lie, this is a scam, especially in the case of some of the former porn stars and some of the people commenting. To pull it out broader than just any one person, they seem to be almost saying that some people are not redeemable, that they
Mhm.
don't believe that God, that Christ can save some people. Have you guys noticed that as well?
Yeah, I have noticed that.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Specifically by people that I don't know if their life is really reflecting that of a Christian walk. Because something that has become very popular on the YouTube space is there's actually some irony in this, because whether it's the Andrew Tates of this world, the Pearls, they like to incorporate God. Of course, I guess Andrew Tate is now Muslim. But they like to incorporate God, or say the guys on the whatever podcast. But yet their behavior is as despicable as the people that they are condemning. It really is kind of like, I mean, back to use Jesus, obviously. It really is kind of like all of the people when they were about to stone the woman caught in adultery, and Jesus writes on the ground, and we don't know what he wrote, but he tells them, he who has no sin, throw the first stone. And they all just drop the stone and walk away because they know they've all sinned. And that's kind of what it's felt like, at least online.
Mhm.
The mob coming to stone someone, and they really just need to be reminded, like, do you have a sin? Have you sinned? Then maybe don't throw stones.
Yeah, you got anything on that, Shags?
Well, yeah, I think the problem is that people approach these things as like you need to really, and from the discussions I've had with people on scripture and what it means to be redeemed and all that, like I don't think they really understand what that entails.
Mhm.
So I think it's very healthy to approach these things in a way that's like, I'm skeptical of this because right now, especially on all of our favorite platforms, Twitter, I mean, they're paying for engagement, right? The more engagement you have, the more money you make. And that's true on a lot of these. So YouTube, on Twitter, Facebook. So someone comes out like, like a ex OnlyFans model or porn star or whatever, and they're saying, I'm, I'm, uh, I'm following Jesus now. I'm renouncing all this, this past life, and now I want to follow, a more religious path. It's going to stir up a lot of questions, or it's going to stir up a lot of controversy. It's going to stir up a lot of talking. So it's hard to say, like, because I want to approach this as a very, very, very skeptical person and say, I don't really believe her. I think this is just another scam. She's scammed people for years, but I understand that's not like, it's probably not the best way to go for all this stuff. I don't know. I think people are smart to be skeptical, but I don't think it's right to say that someone's irredeemable.
No.
I mean, the teachings, I mean, from what, again, I haven't read the Bible, but, even someone who, I couldn't quote exactly what it is in the Bible, but I mean, there's a very, very bad person that was essentially redeemed at the end. And, basically to teach that anyone can renounce their sin. And I do believe that to an extent. I do think that there's really horrible people out there, but, I think someone like Nala, for example, I think it's possible to find your way. But, again, I'm someone who is, I'm not without sin, but I think, oh man, this is a tough sell.
And that's the thing. I mean, even doing this show, sometimes I feel hypocritical because I mean, we all have our sins.
Right.
I'm a smoker and I drink, obviously, behind me.
Mhm.
But I mean, if they're irredeemable, then we're all irredeemable. Is kind of what it comes down to. Just like the guy on the cross next to Jesus. I mean, he was up on a cross for a reason, and he was redeemed right then.
And I guess the question, not to take over what we're talking about, but I mean, they're like someone who is not fully on board with everything and is still skeptical of a lot of stuff is like, is there tears to all this, right? You know, like I think of someone like myself who is like someone who's been taking the public for a ride for a long time, weak men, and essentially stealing their money. Like, we should be really skeptical of someone like that, like a snake oil salesman, you know?
Well, and I think that's where the internet, you know, us all being on the internet has been kind of the issue with this.
Yeah.
Because yes, I believe the internet thinks there are tiers of sin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, being a porn star is probably worse than being a smoker or a drinker, but in reality, it's not.
Yes.
Yeah, and as I like to say, of course, the scripture everyone knows by heart, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Do you know what the word whosoever means in the Greek?
No.
It means whosoever.
It took me a second.
I got it.
Whosoever believes in him shall be saved.
Anyone
Wait.
and everyone.
Does that mean OnlyFans people?
It
though?
does. It does. And, you
What's
know,
up, Odin?
What's up?
Hey, Odin.
How's it going?
Good.
Good to see you, sir. We just jumped right into the topic. Why don't we show one of these videos for anyone who may not be aware? Maybe they're not as online as we are. I've got two pulled up. We can show more if we want to. This one is Nala talking about leaving OnlyFans for Jesus. She's at the top of the screen here.
And it was just such a dark time in my life. Before you started OnlyFans, like, what would you say to yourself or do? I would shake myself and tell her, that girl right there, how worth it she is. You know, how special she actually is. I was just believing the lies of the world, the lies of, you know, myself. I lied to myself so much about it. I do feel like God's gonna use me to reach people in this industry. Like, I don't think I made it to top 0.01% for God not to use me. I was such a numb person. And if I could save somebody from going through that or potentially starting that, I will do it. We have lost who we are. He knows who we are. And we just need to find that. We need to find him so we can find our true identity. He makes it so clear what our mission here is on earth: to preach the word of God, to love God with your entire soul, body, mind, spirit, to love your neighbor as yourself. Life is so beautiful once you know that. I am heavily praying for revival, not stop believing that God can literally do a miracle on our generation. Praying that God sends me like Jonah and just anywhere, anyone he sends to me, I have the courage and the boldness to speak to them about Christ. No matter how I'm feeling that day, no matter what's going on in my life, Jesus is the entire point of all of this.
Sorry about the background music. Some people are saying I can't hear over the background music, but doesn't it sway your opinion? I'm kidding. It is inspirational music. I don't know. I've seen numerous clips of her, and my gut reaction to her is that it's sincere. She seems to me like someone sincerely changed, who's full of joy, who wants to share that, who wants to share how wrong she was and let people know that. And one of the things I've kind of said to people who seem a little, I don't know, to me, skeptical right out the gate is wait and see. I haven't said one way or the other what I think. I said what my gut is about her statement of conversion, but this girl hasn't had a chance to, her walk with God is just beginning. And some people I've seen online have criticized her. Well, if she's a true believer, she'd get rid of that red porny hair and the porny makeup, and she would do this and that. And it's like, I wonder if some of these people, maybe it was so long ago that they came to God that they don't remember how how that walk unfolds. That when you're a baby Christian, it's not like you're suddenly
Yes.
aware, like you just said, Shags, you haven't read the Bible. If you had an experience tomorrow and come to Christ, are you suddenly supposed to be familiar with all of Scripture? Are you suddenly supposed to be, you know, all of the outward changes in fruit the very next day? I don't think people, maybe they don't remember what it was like for them.
No, I mean, that goes back to what I wrote my dissertation on, the topic of sanctification. That is a part of our salvation. The work of God to conform us into the image of God again. That restoration of what was lost at the fall, being restored. That is what that is, and also, you know, growing in grace and the knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. We are to do that all the time, and it's not a stagnant. Our salvation is not stagnant. We are constantly should be getting closer to the Lord and becoming more like the Lord. And our testimony from 10 years ago, should it be our testimony today? Because it's a living faith, and God is always doing something new in our hearts and lives. And when I watch that, you know, who knows what will happen in all his life? Who knows if it's genuine or not? But why would I sit there and doubt it necessarily? Why wouldn't I, as a Christian, not just try to encourage someone in the faith? I mean, I felt that is my job, to encourage people either into the faith or to continue in their faith and grow in it.
Yeah. Are there any things that you guys consider to be like immediate red flags that you would say, oh, wait, no?
Well, yeah, I haven't followed this specific story all that much, because in general, whenever there's major conversions like this, kind of similar to what someone just said, right? I think it's better to wait and see, right? To make sure that, you know, that the conversion is authentic. In general, when someone converts who is a profile figure, right? So for instance, in her case, being someone who was known for being very visible, right? Physically in many ways, it's typically recommended to that person as they're going through spiritual discernment that they remove themselves from the public sphere. Because ultimately what you often find is that someone, even if they, maybe are having a conversion or they think they're having a conversion of heart, they will sometimes just be replacing one platform of public attention for another platform of public attention. And as soon as things go away, if that's the case, then the conversion doesn't stick, right? It doesn't stay, because it was all about the attention and not about the actual belief. So obviously none of us can read her heart. None of us can know what's truly in her heart. Only God can know this at this point. So all we can do is, follow the example of Christ. And I was just looking up again just to have the verses ready. It's like Gospel of John, chapter 5, chapter 8, right? Go and sin no more, right? It's like, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. And again, that's always the requirement, right? Is you can be forgiven for anything. There's no sin that God cannot forgive. However, the caveat is that you do not continue in your sin, right? That you live that life of grace, and that you live that life of grace, consistently, right? That you continue to keep Christ at the center of your heart. So all I can say in this specific case is we have to pray for her, of course. And I think that anyone who has the ability to reach out to her should reach out and say, hey, I think it might be a good idea, especially since you are seemingly very new and young in this life of faith. It might be good to pull back a little bit. It might be good to not be going out full public right now, because there is a danger there, right? We've talked a lot about demonic possession. We've talked about satanic influence right before, and Satan will take things that are good and twist them. And so this could be very well, right? She had this spark of actual faith, but then Satan's twisting it into yes, this is a great way for you to get more attention to yourself. Yes, this is a great more. And so that's why we have to always be very, very, very careful with this stuff. And so again, we can't judge her. We have to pray for her conversion of heart, that it be true. But also, I think that if anyone can reach out to her, they should, and probably give her some advice on maybe pulling back from public life a little bit.
And I do think that's where a lot of the skepticism has come from, that she decided to do this as part of like her online personality.
Yeah.
Which is going to sound bad when I say completely the opposite about Russell Brand. because I mean he does a daily show that has always kind of been about, you know, his spiritual journey, even though it wasn't Christianity journey. I mean, he's been very new age and doing all this for decades. And I mean, we've seen over months, you know, things that where he's kind of had a light bulb go off. But the way hers was, I mean, people are skeptical, I think, just because it was like, hey, I'm a porn star, now I'm a Christian. And I mean, she just put it all out there and just expected everybody to be like, yep, that's how it went. And it very well may be. And she may just be excited about sharing her faith. But I mean, what you were saying earlier, Keri, should she know everything? She did grow up in a Christian family with her father as a pastor. So she knows the Bible. She knows where she strayed. And it's not just like baby Christian necessarily. It's she grew up in it, and she probably knows what's kind of in there. But
Definitely. But
I'm not going to condemn her or attack her for any of it.
Definitely. But some of the things like, you know, the look of her, you know, can Dolly Parton go to heaven because she has big boobs and likes big hair and makeup?
And has said it takes a lot of money to look this cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I believe she absolutely. I will be surprised one day if Dolly Parton is not in heaven from everything I've heard and read about Dolly and things I know personally of things she does like at churches locally in the area. So, you know, back to her, a lot of times with women, they're wanting that attention, obviously. That's why it's attention-seeking kind of looks. And that is something that's going to take time to be healed. And she could, you know, that's why it's not necessarily sinful. You know, it's not sinful to have that color hair.
Right.
And it's just like, again, that is where the growing in grace and really just healing needs to take place. No woman, no young girl thinks to themselves that's in a healthy, you know, a healthy girl thinks I'm going to grow up and be a porn star, or I'm going to grow up and be a prostitute or a stripper or an OnlyFans girl. That tells me that there is emotional damage that has been done, and there needs to be emotional healing take place. And I am definitely one who believes that God can, that comes through the Lord ultimately. But that takes time. Again, I know I mentioned this on the last time we did one of these, how the church, back in the day, the church, I mean, would rescue so many prostitutes, but they would help them learn a new trade and learn so they could not just, because if not, how are they going to make money? They could fall back into prostitution because it's a quick way to make a buck that they know. So again, I think some of this time, it takes time to undo kind of the path she's been on. And again, I hope it's genuine. I can say that when you listen to her speak, there seems to be it seems to be genuine when you listen to her talk. It really does. And I think it really is that excitement of, oh my gosh, I was living in such darkness and I saw a light. And I think, you know, she wants to share that. And I do agree that ultimately it will be best if someone will pull her aside and let her work on herself privately. And then, man, you know, be able to get out and speak and have a very powerful testimony.
Yep.
I will say, when I came to Christ, my instinct, now this is just my instinct, I'm not saying this is the better way or this is what I judge by, but it was the opposite. It was, I didn't talk about, by the way, Brahma's having soundboard issues, guys. He'll be right back. But my mission when I left social justice was to call out what I saw wrong and evil with my old belief system with social justice. My mission was to, in a way, some people have called it doing penance for 20 years in woke or social justice, but it was, it's actually alarming to me that I think it's the biggest existential crisis facing our culture. So it's like, hello, waving my arms, canary in a coal mine. Let me be one of those canaries in the coal mine saying what I think is so wrong with this. And when I came to Christ, I was kind of viewing that as something private, and I didn't want to talk about it, probably honestly, because I thought people would then disregard my criticisms of social justice because they have prejudice against Christians. So, you know, write that off, or or that they might think I was weird because, we are weird Christians. And it was sort of like, I don't know if I need to talk about that. Someone outed me on camera. So at that point, it was actually a blessing in disguise. I was like, okay. And I kind of eased into feeling more comfortable talking about it. But the other thing was, I didn't want knowing what sin I was still struggling with and stuff. It was like, I don't want people to hold me up and be like, Christian podcaster, right? Or I don't know, like measuring God by my faulty stick. And so it was the opposite. It wasn't an immediate for me screaming. What happened for me was that eventually a friend of mine said, you know, actually, she sent me a book with this title. She said, you need to take God off the second floor. She was like, you kind of are viewing, your Christianity as being on the second floor of your house. You go there when you want to think about God things or whatever, but you're not really viewing the whole world through your religious lens, and you're not interpreting things through Christianity, which if it's your belief system, you sort of it obviously you should be, or if you are, you're hiding that. And man, she was spot on. So at that point it was sort of, I can't deny Christ. I can't continue to pretend like it's not the lens through which I view everything. It is. So I don't know, just to give some background on my perspective about her. I guess I'll answer my own question. One immediate red flag for me would be if a person, and I don't know if she's done this, but if somebody converted a public figure and then the next day or very soon after was like, and now I'm a preacher and I'm starting a church. It's like, dude, you're like a baby Christian. In Timothy, there's a whole list of requirements for elders. And one of them is being wise and having been, you have to walk the path for a while. You can't just start instructing other people.
You kind of mean like one Kanye West might have done.
Probably, yes. Yes. That was a lot. Sorry to ramble. It's kind of where I'm coming from on this subject.
There's there's a lot of truth in it, and I think that ultimately, we always have to know, the old adage, the old saying from Greek philosophy, and like know thyself, and it's true also in the life of faith. And there's something within like Catholic theology and philosophy, something known as like your preeminent or your predominant fault. So like there's something like in all of us that is like our key vice, right? Like that one thing that typically like will get us. So I know like for me, it can sometimes be a sense of pride, like thinking I know better than others. And so it's something that I always have to be like that much more, careful about, that much more mindful of. And I feel like for someone, in her situation, especially, and I think in just that field in general, it seems, I think that modesty would be a big thing. That would be, I think, a good thing for her to maybe like look into. This is something that is from what's called the Baltimore Catechism. It says, modesty inclines one to refrain from any action or word that might lead either yourself or others to any unlawful incitement of the sexual appetite. It's to safeguard purity. And I think that is something that can only be learned through time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, again, why it would be best for someone like her, who is so used to the limelight, who's so used to having people give her attention, to pull back, right? And to really try to work on that aspect of modesty, because it doesn't come overnight for sure. But I definitely think that it is something that can be worked on, because ultimately people are used to, unfortunately, looking at her as an object. And the way that you are going to bring about healing, not only in your own life, but also in the lives of those people who you had a direct impact on, is not going to be by going back out in public. It's not going to be by having yourself be, again, as great as the message that she's saying is. Unfortunately, a lot of the people who would have looked at her before are still going to be looking at her as an object, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That for me, Odin, what you were talking about earlier and just now was really the red flag for me. It was like this woman is so used to being the center of people's attention, right? Mm-hmm. And she made waves on the whatever podcast with her take on that, and she seemed very, very unapologetic with that take originally, basically being as sexually liberated as she was. And then I don't even know how much longer it was after that this conversion happened.
It was 10 days.
It was 10 days later.
From
After
the
the
whatever cast?
after the whatever podcast where she was talking about
Oh,
being so sexually open and being a dom and a daddy and
right.
you
And
Well,
know.
I mean, we covered on the very
I
first
think
Christian
so.
panel, we
First
covered
panel.
Nala. We actually brought up the clip of her,
yeah,
and that was a while ago. So I bet I don't know when the actual conversion took place, or if she just now started posting things about it.
yeah, and that to me was just like, for someone who was just so quick, it seemed like even if it was a year turnaround from when she first said it, seems pretty fast. And like, again, to be unapologetic like that about treating men or anyone that way was like okay. And then like you're saying is, well, now she's, she was made pretty infamous or famous from that quote, and now she's putting herself center stage on the other one, which is a better life. Like I won't, again, as someone who's not a devout Christian, I do think that religion is a really good thing. And I think societies built on it and who follow it often fare the best. I don't think there's any real doubt in that it creates a great structure foundation for people. So to that end, I think this is good for her. But someone
is
else
it
in
a
the chat
grift?
had said, what's that?
But is it a grift? I think
Right,
is
and
what
that's, again,
everybody's- what you're getting at, right?
Right. And these things just take time. And as we said, like I will give people the benefit of the doubt because I think that's fair. Like I've been judged pretty harshly quickly in the past, and I don't necessarily want to do that to people. And I made my judgments in jest on one of my shows, just for fun, because I'm just like, what, this is kind of funny. But really, when I sit down and look at it, I hope that someone like her finds her way, because I find that way of life abhorrent, and I think there's a lot of cultural rot associated with it. And I think that this nihilism that people are starting to pull through everything is a reason that we are seeing young women go to these professions and say, I can do this. This is a viable way to live and work, because we're being told by these influencers like Nala, pre-conversion, that this is okay. This is how you should live your life, and you shouldn't care. And that is totally wrong. So I hope she can take the time, as you said, Odin, to like get out of the limelight, because I think that's part of your conversion. I think it's part of making up for your sins is you're not going to be front and center. It takes time to reflect and really stare into the void a little bit, and then kind of come out once you've sort of learned. Again, this is someone who doesn't necessarily follow the Christian faith, but in many other ways, I've had to take big steps back to make leaps forward in other ways in my life. And that's been really important moments where I can't be here. I only have this much time. But in the meantime, I gain a lot of perspective on the things that I've done wrong and how I can move forward and be a better person.
Yeah.
Well, and I've known you for 2 years now. I know
Mhm.
your integrity and your moral code, even if you haven't converted to the Christian faith.
Right.
But I did want to ask you one question kind of about this situation from then an outsider's perspective, the way that she is being treated. How does that make you feel about if you ever did, become a Christian, would you be fearful of the way this is going on right now? Because from the outsider's perspective, I would think, yeah, they're just going to attack anybody who makes a pronouncement if they've done anything wrong in the past. At least that's what we're seeing on Twitter. And I know Twitter is Twitter, but
Yeah.
what do you think on that, Shags?
Yeah, no, I think, and that's one of the issues with social media is like most of that stuff you have to ignore, but it certainly has not helped like people's perception of Christian faith or religion in general. It's like I still think that people who follow a religious path have a much stronger moral code than others who don't. I still think you can have one, but I do think it's still rooted in some sort of religion. And I don't, yeah, it makes me fearful that if I ever came out as this, it would be this big deal. But I've also learned to take what people say online with a grain of salt, because most people are, again, they're paying for engagement. They're paying for you to get mad. And most of the time you just have to ignore that. The people in my life, though, the people that matter, and I think everyone can learn from this, is that most people in your life, even the most skeptical ones, are very accepting of that, because you're not like, I'm not imposing my religion on my neighbor, you know, I'm just living my life. And if I happen to go to church or whatever, they're like, I live in I think my 90% of my street is Mormon, you know, but I love every single person on my street. They're the nicest people I know, you know, so but you don't see that online. Online, you just see a sea of crazy people, worshiping a genuine con man from, the 19th century. So it's just weird. It's weird. It's a weird place that we live in now, but yeah, it's.
I have two things I want to say. First, and I do agree, and I agree. Here's what I'm going to say. I believe if she is genuine, I believe the Lord will take her through, if you want to call it being in the dark room, whatever you want to call it, where the Lord will take and mold her privately. I do believe that will happen. I will say I don't want to quickly judge if she should have just immediately been silent. And I will use the example of the Samaritan woman. The woman who, of course, Jesus meets, and she's been married 5 times, and the man she's with now is not her husband. When she has this, and he reveals who he is to this Samaritan woman living in sin. And what does she do? Does she take this knowledge and just privately go back to her house? No, she goes into her village and she says, "Come see a man who told me everything I've done." Yeah. And she really acts as an evangelist, and then they all come and hear from the man himself, and they believe because of his words. So I want to give her a little time too. I think there is excitement if you genuinely have a conversion where you just want to talk about it. And, maybe she will. I believe if she's genuine, God will take her through like a time of where she steps back. Because we all do need that. But I did want to bring that up. And then secondly, I just want to say, as far as the time period of conversion doesn't bother me at all. And I will give 2 examples. I'll give a first biblical one, being Saul of Tarsus is on his way.
Stole mine.
Saul of Tarsus is on his way. He has orders that he can imprison Christians, and on his way, he meets Christ. And overnight, basically, he becomes a devout Christ follower and becomes the apostle to the Gentiles and writes 60% of the New Testament. And he did have his time after that he goes back, and God deals with him kind of privately. So there's that. And then secondly, I can give my own testimony. In college, one night, the night before, I was out doing all the things I had been doing, living up a college life. That next morning, I took a few steps in my college dorm. I fell to my knees, started weeping and repenting of everything I did, and never went back to that life. What happened in those few hours? I don't know. Yes. I'll say what someone said. She said, the prayers of your parents. And it very well for Nala was the prayers of her parents.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why there has to be a balanced approach. Because I was going to mention, St. Paul as well, saying that the timing is not really as much of an issue. And I think that that's one of the problems that we have in our world today, is because we are on social media and because we have seen so many things, it's harder for us to trust the things that we see. It's harder for us to believe that someone is authentic, that someone who is doing this today. Because, think about how it would have been in the pre-social media age, right? She would have gone to, likely would have gone to a church and would have, had this conversion, and most people would have had no idea about what her life was before. And those that would have known would have been very limited. But because of the world that we live in, right, where everything is known, right, you can look up someone's history. And that's one of the dangers too. And I think that, with that being the case, right, obviously we recognize that one can have indeed a conversion overnight. One can indeed have this instant type of following, right? Because Christ can work, right? To deny that someone can convert overnight, that someone can have a change of heart overnight, is to deny Christ. Mm-hmm. It's to deny the power of Christ. With that being said, we also still have to be also very, very careful as well, right? We do have to be, I think, very calculating in this. And that's why, as I said, what needs to be done is I think people need to reach out to her and say, hey, I honestly think that this is something that maybe it should, focus on this relationship, this. And I know people have said like, well, it's not a new relationship. She's not new because she had it before. It's like, it is new. When you're going through all of the stuff that she went through, that all the stuff that she did, I'm sorry, but this is starting over. This is starting fresh, right? It's one of the beauties of the faith is that you can start fresh, right? But it does mean, right, you're getting back into the swing of things, right? You're getting back into what it means to love and to follow Christ. And so I do think that there does need to be that, that balance to the approach as well.
Yeah, in my comments earlier, I was talking about her knowledge of stuff, not necessarily that she had lived it out before.
Yeah.
But growing up a pastor's daughter,
Yeah.
she probably
I was referring
at
to
least
the
has
chat because there's been a lot
knowledge
of
it.
comments in the chat about it.
Yeah, I'm going to put some of these up. Thank you for the super chat, Skillet, for $10 with one of my favorite verses. He says, discerning, yes. Skeptical, remember, fornicators, drunkards, revilers, such were some of you. But you were washed, sanctified, justified in the name of Jesus. 1 Corinthians 6, 9 through 11. Thank you for that. Also, Nomo says Romans 5:8, but God showed his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. One of my favorite verses and a good reminder. Keto and Crime, hey Tracy, for $5 says, I focus on the words of Jesus and do not sweat the rest. Thank you, Tracy, for being here. I got to have you on one of these. Keto and Crime for $5 also reminds me of Matthew 7:5. First, take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Several people have been posting that one in the chat. I did have this one on the screen earlier when you guys were talking about this. John Thomas was sort of echoing your question, Brahma. He said, attacking her discourages people from letting Christ into their lives. That's one thing I was also wondering if people see that and are afraid, to confess Christ. If they are afraid there's going to be that sort of attacking. But, I think the longer you do the walk, you'll see you're going to be attacked either way.
Yeah.
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 Like, eh.
I guess it's more of like, because it's a great point because where's your support, right? Because the world's going to hate you for coming out following Christ, right? The world's going to hate you. But if even the Christians as well are being critical, it's like, okay, who's got my back?
Exactly.
And that's why, as I said, like anyone who's going after her for, her hair, for things like that's I think just a bit out of line and really just not relevant to it. But I think if you have genuine questions and genuine concerns, I think that's a very different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elsid Barrett, member for 4 months. Thank you, Elsid. Says, I'd rather be skeptical and be wrong than believe her and be wrong. Either way, it's her journey, and whether I believe her or not is irrelevant.
We have to have the charitable view. Like that,
Yeah.
charity demands that we have the most charitable view that we can. That doesn't mean that we necessarily have to like that. Like we obviously, our gut can say something different, but we should always try to be as charitable as we can with someone, especially in a situation like this.
Yeah, and that makes me think too, a scripture I have written down that because so many of the names again, and these aren't people who really I think are Christian, the Pearls of the world, the Laura Loomer, whatever her name is, that came out so harshly against her.
Wait, who did? Loomer? Gross.
What's her name? Laura Loomer?
Laura
Ew. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm not a fan.
Yeah. But James 2:13 says, for judgment will be merciless to the one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment.
I'd rather hang out with Nala than that chick, that loony chick.
Oh, yeah.
Brett Evans, American Patriot, for $10. Thank you, Brett. Says, have either of you seen I Can Only Imagine? It's one of my favorite redemption stories. It's about the life of Bart Millard, whose dad was an atheist and who turned to Christ later on. I highly recommend it. Have any of you guys seen this movie?
I haven't seen it.
Nope.
Somebody make a note. Maybe we should watch this one. I love a good redemption story. It makes me remember that it brings that experience back to the forefront of I'm going to take a break in reading these, and since we were talking about them, can I put Russell Brand up for a second?
Yeah.
I was going to say before moving on to it fully, because this just came to my mind. because here's the truth, and this is why anyone who is a Christian really needs to consider these words when Christ is talking to Peter about how often should I forgive my brother. Not 7, but 70 times 7, or sometimes it's translated 77 times 7. Essentially, that there should be no limit. It's one of the toughest things of our faith is to have mercy. And that's why, people could say, well, I've been burned so many times before, or, et cetera. It's like, yes, but again, the demand of the cross is not an easy one. And it's a very difficult road to follow. And that's why the Christian path is to find it within our hearts to have that openness, right? So I think that that's also something else that kind of is relevant to this one.
Last thing I will say before we move on to Russell Brand, because it made me think of it. Joshua chapter 2, you have Rahab, the prostitute, who hears of what the God of the Hebrews is doing, and she has faith. And because of her faith, God spares her and her entire family. And of course, Rahab goes on to be in the genealogy of Jesus Christ, a former prostitute.
Wow.
Shags, I think you were trying to say something too.
Yeah, well, I don't know. There's a couple of things that came to mind. One was that I wanted to share my quick redemption that has nothing to do necessarily with religion, but I didn't know if this was the time to do it. I could do it after. But I did, like, a lot of this stuff, a lot of the problems I see stemming from, like, the judgments people make so quickly, especially online, I feel like goes back to where we are in life. Like, anything we want, we get it instantly. You want a gallon of milk, or you want a lawn chair, you just go to Amazon, buy it. It's at your house in 2 hours now. Like, you don't have to wait for anything. And that's one of the problems we see is, like, and you touched on this, like, pre-internet, you would never know this person existed. Her redemption would be her, like, interaction in her church with her pastor. And it's arguably better. It might be better. Her story could influence people, and that could be just as good, but we want to make judgments because we want to see results right now, because that's what we're used to. We can get everyone. You want knowledge? YouTube. Just spend 4 hours on there. You can learn astrophysics. So I think that's one of the, we have this need for now, and we don't know how to take things slow. Whereas before, things took time, and that's part of the journey, as you guys have kind of touched on, is that this stuff takes time. It might succeed, it might not. Her journey with Jesus is going to come in her time or not.
Yes.
So it's that was just kind of where I wanted to go with that. Like I said, I was going to share my sort of redemption thing since you guys were, but I can wait for the Russell Brand stuff to go if you'd like, because it does.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because, like, it's so funny how we literally could learn anything, and yet how many of us don't do that. Like, it's one of the things where I go back to myself. I'm like, man, I could learn any language I want. I could become an expert at anything. And I think, why am I not doing that? And I think, again, it's part of the age we live in where we become so just distracted by everything, right? So,
absolutely. Yeah.
I'd actually kind of like to hear your redemption story.
I would too.
Well, this is why I've always been on the fence with religion, Christianity, or whatever, is that these experiences that I've had are largely, they're so personal that I don't feel the attraction of something other than me. And, like, in the case of my story is my kids being born, largely my second son, who was born 2.5 months early. So it was a very big, like, health scare, being in a hospital for 4 months, or my wife being in the hospital for 4 months. Like, these are when things became bigger than me. Like, because if anyone's a sinner, it's me, because I spent a lot of time in my youth, partying, drinking, womanizing, and it's not a part of my life I'm proud of. But experiencing that part of life has made me the person I am, and is going to help me raise great kids, I think. My sins are who I am, so I kind of carry it with me. But then my recent health scares, I was just pushing myself to limits that I wasn't paying attention to my own health. Wasn't taking medicine. I have a history of epilepsy. I've had grand mal seizures in the past, and I had 5 in one day, which, if you know anything about that, it's like 5 in one day is pretty intense for your mind to hold on to. I consider myself pretty lucky that my brain didn't turn into scrambled eggs. But these things, like, they've made me realize that I am not as important as my children are, right? Like, I mean, obviously I need to be here for them. I guess my life is important, but like my kids, I need to be here
You
for
have
them.
something you would sacrifice yourself for.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I don't know. It just, both of those moments where, like, I almost, we could have lost our second born. I could have lost my life. Like, I know that I'm in control. Well, I'm not so much in control of my son, but I'm in control of me. I'm in control of my health, and I want to be there. And I know how important it is to take care of myself because someone else is dependent on me. And that really, again, it helped me put aside a lot of things that were not important and made me realize that there's a whole world besides me, but I also need to take it slow. Like I said, I don't need to be up until 1:30 in the morning every night doing some sort of work. I don't need to stress out about certain things. I need to take time to unplug, go outside and like take walks and get back to the gym. Like, all this stuff is so important physically. So I don't know. I mean, there might be arguably some threads of spirituality in there that I haven't just made the connection with yet, but I found all those things a little bit more, like, I don't know. They just seemed like I'm here. I can feel myself. I didn't feel the presence of someone like intervening necessarily.
There's
'Cause I
definitely
don't-
spiritual threads in there, and that's why for 2 years I've said sooner or later we'll get you.
Well, in the instance of my seizures, I didn't say this part, but so I was alone at home with my 5-year-old. My 7-year-old had just gotten picked up for school, and then my 5-year-old was there with me. I collapsed in the hallway, and then he had the presence of mind to like call my wife, and then she was like, "Where's Dad? Where's Dad?" I'm like, "Oh, he's ignoring me," is what he said. She's like, "What are you talking about? Put her on the phone." And he just said, he's sleeping on the floor. So like that there was like one of those, like, I have a hero. My son's a hero, you know? And I don't know. It's a hard thing to talk about sometimes because it was such a beautiful moment in connection between me and him. Even though, you know, I obviously don't remember it because it's unconscious, but yeah. So that was kind of like my redemption was essentially watching my son go from this 2-pound baby into a fully grown, healthy child, and realizing like there's miracles that science can perform that I can't even imagine. And then my son saving my life, that very same boy saving my life. So
Shagsworth, the only thing I want to add to this, since we're on this show, is that your sins don't have to define who you are, and you don't have to carry them.
thank you.
They can be
And
washed away, and you can still be you and have learned from those sins, but they don't have to linger with you.
They can be used to give you a unique position in the body of Christ to be able to witness. And like Nala was talking about, if she's sincere, being able to speak to people in the porn industry and have some degree of credibility with them because she was there. And it gives her that unique background. Like, that's kind of how I view them now. Is I regret my sins, but I also am glad that to be where I am now, and to, like you said, have learned from them, Brahma, and be able to speak, with credibility about being in that place. Like when I talk about alcoholism, for example. So I would add something else too from that. And thank you for sharing that with us, which is, you didn't have to do that. And I appreciate it. You opening up and talking about this. I think one thing you said that I've just recently started thinking a lot about, actually, it was since we reread C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters, is that we have varying degrees of control over things, but we don't actually have control over, like, full control over anything. It's sort of like, in the Screwtape Letters, at one point he was talking about, humans like to think of my time, my life, my this, and everything we are given is a gift. We don't decide when we're taken out of this world. We don't decide what health things we're going to go through. Those things are out of our control sometimes, but we do have varying degrees of control. And as we get further away from ourselves, that's what I hear you saying, is like, this is what I have the most control over, is my health and my body and the choices I make and what I value. And that's absolutely true. I think we tend to, as humans, want to focus on the things in that sphere of influence that we have the least influence over, the least control, like, going out in the street and protesting about the climate. And it's like, dude, why don't you go to the gym? Like, I don't know. You have more control over that, a little bit more, right?
Well,
Does that make sense?
And that was this kind of the scariest part, was like, even the stuff that I was in my control, like I was ignoring it, like intentionally not taking medicine because I thought, oh, I'm fine. I haven't had a seizure in a while. And then, but then you're working yourself to death and like not properly hydrating and not sleeping the way I should. And then realizing that just outside that bubble, I can't control it. Like, tomorrow's not guaranteed. I could walk outside my house right now and a car could jump the curb and hit me, gone. Or I might not have one more moment with my son because the family who brings him to school, they might get into an accident. All that stuff terrifies me. And when you're a parent, like, every single day is like that, like, I mean, you don't ruminate on it, but every now and then you think, like, what if this is the last time? I mean, I don't know how many times that in between, over these last 3 months that I couldn't drive with my suspended license, like, I just thought I probably cried almost every day, like, with the love that I have for my kids and my wife, and like how lucky I am, that I'm here and there's nothing wrong. Like, I'm okay. And that's like that. I don't know. There's nothing, it's just a very great feeling, but I don't take it for granted. That's for sure.
Do you say gratitude prayers? Like, because you're not a believer, I'm just curious. Because some people I know are not believers, but they do gratitude prayers because of neuroscientists who say it increases your gratitude to say it out loud, but increases your mood. And do you have any practice like that?
Not always, but I used to journal like at least once a week and write down things that I was grateful for, because I thought it was an important exercise, even just at the end of the day, just like real quick, just be like, oh, I'm grateful for clean water today. Even if it was something silly, I would write it down, because there's a lot that we take for granted now that I don't think people realize. Even a hot shower 50, 60 years ago wasn't like an everyday thing necessarily, or maybe a little, 80 years ago. But, like, that's the thing that we fall out of. But I used to do it. I don't do it much anymore, and I should, because I think it's important.
You got a lot to be grateful for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
By the way, I know about the shower because for 5 months that we lived here, we didn't have one.
Yep.
I'm trying not to forget that.
Sorry to derail everything, but I thought it was an important thing.
You didn't.
Sure.
Randy's here. Hey, Randy. He says, God bless you and your son, Tom. Amazing story.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Okay, let's put Russell Brand up. Russell Brand just got baptized, and I saw some similar, not to the same degree, but I saw some similar comments sort of in the chat, one or in his comments. One specific one I saw said, Christianity's the new grift. And I was like, where you been? There's always been grifters in Christianity. Come on. It's like any belief system. You're going to get con artists attracted to that because there's people of sincere belief there. Mm-hmm. So of course there are, but I don't get that feeling about Russell Brand. Let's play this. Tell me what you guys think about this.
I'll be talking to you about my personal baptism this weekend. Isn't it extraordinary, any of you that have experienced this already, to get baptized? You feel like, how can this ceremony have any real import? How can the gentle, or actually in my case, quite radical immersion beneath water, and in my case, a live river, make any real difference? How can the sins of the past be washed away? How can you be born again? How can you awaken anew? I suppose to answer that question, you have to inquire into what you consider the self to be, whether you're made up just of impulses and urges and memories, or whether or not you believe there is a ghost in the machine, or more likely a Holy Spirit, if you're willing to invite it into your life. I've reached a point in my life where for a long while, in fact, I've known that the material world was not enough. And more than that, as many of you are surely already mouthing, it's not even about you. This I've learned as an addict in recovery. The pursuit of my own goals and my own agenda always leaves me cold, and always leaves me empty, and always leaves me wanting more. You can never have enough of what you don't really want. For me, this is a new discovery. It is a surrender undertaken in gratitude and in sincerity. And I know that it's not something I'll be able to undertake perfectly, but for the first time in my life, I fully understand that I'm not at the center of my universe. And I say that as a parent. I've got 3 really, really beautiful kids I'm devoted to and dedicated to. But now I know that my function here is to be of service and to be guided, and to no longer be in autonomous or authoritative control of the measures and pursuits that are put before me. And that aligns so beautifully with what we do here on this show and on this channel. This is an opportunity for us to look at corruption in institutions, look at hypocrisy in media, look at a planet that seems to be in pretty serious trouble, and see how individually and collectively we can participate in an awakening. So for me, I've done what I believe is unavoidable, inevitable, and necessary for me, for all of the exotic exploration, for all of the various drugs and substances, for all of the esoteric practices. I found it in that humble place that was at the end of my arm, at the end of my street, sat at bus stops, sat in churches, droned on about in school assemblies, in Christianity, and in particular in the figure of Christ. And I'm done proselytizing. Your journey will be your journey, but I'll be praying for you as many have been praying for me. And I appreciate all of your prayers, and I've felt your prayers, and I've been carried by your prayers, and I will do my best to honor your prayers.
I just want to say with Russell Brand, it was the next logical step. If you followed Russell Brand over the last couple years, he's been on this path for multiple years now.
Yeah.
Like it was the next step. So I mean, could it be not genuine? I guess sure, but he sounds very genuine, and I feel like we've watched the slow transition happen now for a couple years. And I would say about people like him. If one day Joe Rogan, a devout atheist, becomes a Christian, will I be shocked? No, because people like Russell Brand, I think Joe Rogan for the most part, who are genuinely hungry and seeking for truth, are going to fall into Christianity. They're going to have to deal with it. What'd you say?
I said, you can't help it, Shags, because you're a real truth seeker. You're going to get there.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about James Lindsay. I'm like, just make sure I get the toaster when you convert. I'm kidding.
The thing is with Joe, I've been really listening to a couple of his episodes recently. I listened to it was the Graham Hancock and the debate he had with the other guy, and then I'm listening to the trigonometry guys right now. In both of those episodes, he not talking like an atheist. Recently, he's been kind of talking as more of someone like myself, who's agnostic, who's like sort of he said, I think it was with Constantine and Francis. He was like, there is something out there. No, it was the debate one. He was saying there is something out there. He's like, I just don't know what it is. And I was like, wow, I've never heard Joe talk like this before. And that's, like I said, I do think it's really good. And it's not that, and maybe it is my fear of being ousted or being, judged by other people. Cause it's, you see it with people like Russell and Nala, like maybe it is that I don't just come out and say, I don't know, but it's funny. I'm just glad people are like being more like looking for that truth, what that truth is. I don't know yet. Yeah.
Open.
Yeah. It's
That's the
important.
thing is it's like I was so closed off for so long. I think some people they get stuck in this place of not there's a lot of open-minded atheists in the chat. I don't know if Pirate's here tonight. One of my mods, they tolerate a lot from me. But some atheists are very closed-minded and very arrogant about what they don't believe. For example, one of the people I mentioned in the intro when we started, Ayan Hirsi Ali, who just announced that she's converted to Christianity. And then lo and behold, if her good friend Richard Dawkins didn't write this really nasty, in my opinion, open letter insulting her and basically calling her a liar and saying, "How could you believe?" And that was just, to me, I felt sorry for him actually, because I felt like his mind is so rigid. It's so closed. He's so certain he knows. And her position to me is more open-minded. Like, I don't know everything. I think there's a God. I think I'm a Christian now. I think this is, whereas his is like, no, there's absolutely no way, and no smart person like you, it was this backhanded compliment. You're too smart to believe, basically, he was saying.
That's his vice, though, is pride. I mean, he is so prideful that he cannot possibly open himself up. And I would not be surprised if there was some type of like just demonic influence with it, because it's very pervasive. Like when it comes to like new atheism, especially, it's so like by its nature, like the hatred of religion. Like it's one thing to be critical or to be skeptical, but like just the flat out hatred that you can even just see, right? Just with those general comments there. I think it says there's a little bit more going on there.
Yeah.
And with Russell, I mean, yes, I think that's the natural endpoint for where he's been going. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I found a little bit weird is he doesn't talk about his actual conversion a lot. He was making a huge deal about the symbolism of him getting baptized. And he's always been very new agey. So the only thing that I'm kind of skeptical on is he's really big into new age symbolism. So is the baptism just a symbol for him, or, where was the conversion before that? Because he basically just came out and said, "I'm getting baptized."
And who baptized him? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's just, some of that natural skepticism that we've kind of been feeling. I'm not going to condemn him for anything, but I mean, just with his past and watching him, because I watch him quite a bit for his political stuff, and there's not a lot of talk about the Christianity portion of it. There's a lot of talk about the baptism portion of it, which is a piece of Christianity, but I mean, it's not where we generally consider ourselves saved.
Yeah, but my brother is a recovering heroin addict, right? So one of the things like, and I say recovering, he's been like fully, like he has been clean for several years now, but he considers himself recovering. That's the only caveat I'll make.
Yeah, and I haven't seen all the videos, so.
Well, what I mean being that he is a recovering addict, a lot of those people, and my brother included, find their faith in something along the way. So when I look at him from when he, gives up, drugs and alcohol to now, like you're saying, Michelle, is that it all goes like it's a natural progression of where he started. The thing that concerns me about him is relapse, because a lot of addicts relapse. And if he does, I see more people pointing to that as like, oh, see, like he wasn't real. Like he just was just saying this. And now like none of us are perfect, first of all. And when you're going from that way of life, especially with Hollywood, especially with drugs, it's a really hard road. I think Russell's done a stand-up job, a very, very good job at it. And it's been very public facing, since he sort of stepped away from Hollywood and then started doing stuff independently. And one thing I'll add to it is, Keri, you and I, when we talked, about like forgiveness and stuff, and how like resentment and jealousy is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's what I see from a lot of these so-called Christian influencers and conservatives. Like they're putting all this like vitriol towards these people. And that's why like I look at it like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Like you're putting all this hate out there. It should be what you're against.
Yeah.
Like I don't understand. Like you're not practicing what you what you preach, or
Yes.
so, even as someone who doesn't follow that way of thinking, like, I know, like, if you're on a path of redemption, if you're on a path of Christ or whatever, like this is kind of where you have to go. You can't be so judgmental. Even I know that, like, it's just a good moral framework to have, because that's how I want to be treated, so it's just one of the...
It's thank you for bringing up that point. It's just speaking of knowing them by their fruits, I feel like some of the people attacking new converts have sort of shown me their fruit, like their rotten fruits. Like, not everyone, I'm just saying at some, I'm like, wow, like the animosity is not even thinly disguised.
Yeah.
So sometimes I do have Russell Brand's post baptism video. Let me read a couple of these, and then if there's something else you guys want to see, I can put it up. Keto and Crime for $10. Thank you for the super chat, Tracy. She says, to what Brahma Bull said, I was raised as a Pentecostal, very strict. I became an atheist. Now I have come back to the faith. I am not the same Christian I was before my double conversion, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
This
Right.
speaks to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was back at the beginning when we were talking about Nala and her family being Christian and her father being a pastor. And I was talking more about the knowledge of what's in the Bible and what she probably got in her household. I full on believe that. I mean, I've got so many friends. I went to a Christian school. Almost probably 80% of the people that went to high school with me seems like they lapsed into atheism at some point, or agnosticism. And some of them come back, and everybody's different after. So, yeah, I fully believe in that.
And something else too, really quick, I want to say, with Nala's parents being pastors, I believe there is a very real spiritual attack on pastors' kids. Like, I know they get a hard rep, but pastors' kids go through a lot. They see a lot at young ages. They see Christians acting unchristlike all the time, sometimes towards their parents, towards them. They see
Sometimes it is their parents.
Sometimes it is their parents. They say, wait, this is a man of God and he's acting like this. And they have so much, the enemy has so much to play with on these young minds of pastors' kids. So I just kind of like to give a little grace. My mother's actually a pastor's kid, but it's just like pastors' kids go through a lot.
Mm-hmm. That's true in my experience, having known a few. Mario, thank you for the $10 super chat. Says, I've worked with thieves, killers, drug users, and sex workers. I've learned that words are but wind. Actions are what show true intent. I will leave judgment and mercy to the Lord. Christ be with everyone. Thank you for that. Thank you for those beautiful words.
Especially with this topic, I think that's kind of where we all need to be. None of us knows either way.
Mm-hmm.
Randy from Georgetown for $20. Thank you, Randy, for the super chat. He says, the challenge with celebrity is ego, a space where evil thrives. A well-known fellowship follows a tradition that anonymity. Oh, sorry. Did you guys cut out for me for a second? I think it was just for me though. That anonymity with press. And I can never say it. Anonymity. And I can't. Sometimes I seriously just sit in my room and practice this word.
All right, you guys know what
There
the
you
super
go.
chat.
With press, radio, and film is essential. Not a bad rule for the newly converted celebrity class. That I know the fellowship of which he speaks, and that's very true. ADL 1992, thanks for the $1.99 super chat. Says, concerning Russell Brand, I think that was before we showed the video. And then this is a good question from Shane Bentley. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Shane says, I'd be curious if y'all don't mind pondering this question. As a prodigal son, I sincerely think we are in the last days. By all means, I can't be wrong. Favorite verse of mine are Romans 3:23-24.
And he then corrected it to, I could be wrong.
Oh, I could be wrong. By all means, I could be wrong. Favorite verse of mine is Romans 3. What do you guys think?
You will not know the hour.
Yeah. You won't. They thought they were living in the last days. The apostles did. So we're definitely closer than they were 2,000 years later.
Yep.
Could be any moment. Could be, a while away.
I do think what we are seeing right now is they're going after the Saturday people, and pretty soon they're going to start coming after the Sunday people.
Oh, what a great way of putting it.
Who are the
So
Saturday people?
Jews.
The
Jewish
Jews.
people.
Oh, okay.
They worship on Saturday, we worship on Sunday. But I think
Sure.
that's where
I
we're headed, but that doesn't mean end of times,
Yeah.
because the church is always going to be persecuted.
it means read Hebrews 12 and get ready for the race. My pastor, Bradley Helgerson, recommended that whole chapter to me once, and it's just, I think it's so right on for the times we're in. I'll say this about the times we're in. Nala said in that clip she hopes that she's praying for a revival. Do you guys get a sense? This is where my gut is on this. I keep seeing the stats about how church attendance is down, people are falling away from Christianity, that, and they're basing it on people who say they're Christians and people who go to church, and how, it's this declining slope for decades. However, I think that's true. I think there are fewer people going to church and fewer people saying they're Christian. However, the anecdotal evidence around me of people I know who I've come into contact with in real life and who I've met online and then met in person afterwards, or people in the public eye like these Russell Brand, some of these people we talked about, I think we are in the middle of a revival. And here's how I think that works. I think a lot of the chaff is being blown away. Like if Christianity is not the popular dominant faith right now, so the popular dominant faith right now is woke, and so the people who are just followers, lukewarm, of course they're moving to what's popular. Let's go be a part of that. And so you're seeing fewer of them at church. Great. I probably shouldn't say that. I want them at church, but yes, but I think the truth seekers, like you guys mentioned, Joe Rogan being a real truth seeker. I think truth seekers are finding God after this road of contemplation and thoughtfulness, or maybe something like in Russell's case, having to come to grips with some horrible way of living, or in Nala's case, and finding that redemption. And what do you guys think? Is it possible? Could we be in the middle of a revival even though church attendance is down?
I think you're in the middle of kind of two kinds, because the other anecdotal evidence that we're seeing is Gen Z males especially are looking at the woke stuff and saying, this is stupid, this isn't right, I want out. So I think you're going to see the young leaders start to go down that same path that Russell Brand has been on, that path, looking for the right answers. And that portion of that generation seems to be looking for the answers.
Yeah, I think what you're also seeing is, at least from a Catholic view, what you're seeing is there's a huge decline in the 1970s hippy dippy churches, even in the Catholic Church. Like that seems to be kind of going away. And the thriving communities, at least in the Catholic Church, are the Latin Mass communities, because there's something to tradition, there's something to the sacred that this world, that this generation is being drawn to, because we have everything at our fingertips. We have all of this information. We've got social media. And so there's just something about the sacred. And I think that's why I think you are seeing, especially in more traditional congregations, even outside of the church, I think you're probably also seeing like higher growth, because as these more liberal communities, which are just accepting everything, right? We see this even mentioned in scripture, like they will eventually follow pastors, follow shepherds who will tell them exactly what they want to hear, right? Who will tell them exactly the things that they want to hear. But even with people like Russell Brand, right? One of the things that I was intrigued by him was he actually was starting to like pray the rosary. Like he was finding intrigue by the rosary. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Candace Owens, I know, has gotten some attention as well, because she converted actually to the Catholic Church. So I think there's like huge, like, it's interesting. There's this movement of people to just more traditional ways of living. And I think that includes Christian life, just in a general sense.
Well, and some of it too, I will say, from everything that I've studied, okay, this is pre-COVID. This is right before COVID hit. It was kind of a half-truth they were telling everyone. People are leaving the churches. People are yada, yada, yada. What they weren't telling them is the trend before COVID was they were leaving mainline denominations in favor of non-denominational churches that they don't have the ability, they don't track in the same way. And that was kind of the trend that was happening. Not that people necessarily were not going to church, they just were going to a different church. And it wasn't necessarily one of the mainline church denominations.
I think both of what you're saying lines up with what I've witnessed just around me. My church is non-denominational. I know several friends who converted to Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox. I didn't even know what that meant a couple years ago. And, because it's not on those lists of denominations like you are pointing out, Michelle, when they're tracking church attendance, I guess. But they are looking for something with guts, with meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's also a lot of people that just don't like the idea of organized religion, but still are looking for God. And Chags, I think you had opened your mouth to almost say something.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the brick and mortar like meeting places they're kind of falling to the wayside. COVID destroyed that for places where like we don't need to operate in person. We can operate outside of that. And that it's a real shame, but I do think that you're starting to see a revival or even people realizing that traditional values are not necessarily a bad thing, because I think we've been force-fed ESG, DEI stuff for the past few years, and people, for whatever reason, because it is complete horse doo-doo, or because it's losing them money, are realizing this doesn't work. And this works, though. And I think you're slowly starting to see that. And just like this stuff didn't weasel its way in like one day, it was slowly sort of like put in. I think you're going to start people needing to find purpose again. They need to take a break. And shows like this provides people, and I've seen all sorts in the chat, which I think is great. They need purpose. They need to understand, like, sometimes a break on Sunday is great. I can go meet with like-minded people. I can, share these values, and, for no other reason, I could find someone to barbecue with. And then that will carry over. And just like Nala's conversion, just like Russell's conversion, nothing is going to happen overnight. But I do see this in an upward trend with the Catholic Church or the Christian faith, or what, I don't even know how to necessarily brand it. But I think religion is making a comeback. I've seen other celebrities besides these two, and they're not even coming to my mind at the moment, that have spoken. I think it was Denzel Washington that I heard talk about his faith. Even Jim Carrey, I think, has recently come out and talked about his faith, which was an interesting one. Like, all this is really good. And when you see people in Hollywood speak out like this, I think it's really good for young people, because they're like, oh, it's cool. It's cool because Jim Carrey, I know, is a really funny guy, or Denzel's one of the best actors of all time. Like, or, Russell Brand's one of the funniest people ever, like that's what we need in some regard, is these people to sort of to take the step. But we also need, and this goes for everything, we need good people and parents present with their kids, outbreeding these woke idiots. Sorry. Like, I mean, for real. I mean, I was talking with someone the other day, with my good friend in my interview. It was 2 weeks ago. If you're interested, it's on my page. All This on the Farm is the interview on my Ready, Set, Shag podcast. He talks about how if you want to beat this whole thing and you want to bring back something good in society and culture, you write down 4 or 5 things. And this is for people who haven't found their partner yet. Write down 4 or 5 values that you hold really important to you. Find someone who shares those and have 4 or 5 kids with them, and then pass those on to your kids. That is how you're going to change culture. There's not a solution that we can snap our fingers right now, and even in the church, that's going to change this stuff. All right, I'll hop off my soapbox, but that's really, I mean, that's, I think, where we're at, where we're going to go.
I was just going to plug my pastor at Church on the Square. You can find the sermons here on YouTube. To your point, Shax, he's been delivering several sermons recently about how to parent, and they're like 20 minutes each. I completely recommend them. Even if you're not a believer, you might get something out of them. I know we have to wrap up. I've got a final question I want to go out on. Actually, thank you, Piers Taylor, for 5 Australian buckaroos. says millions of Christians watch YouTube for teaching and preaching of the word, and many Muslims come to Christ because of Christian apologetics on YouTube. I don't doubt this is true. I've been watching some Christian apologetics on YouTube recently and learning a little more myself.
Even Islam, though, there's a point there, right? Because there's also been a huge resurgence, or there's been a huge growth in Islam as well. And I think part of it is cultural to a certain extent, but I think another part of it is also because of the fact that they have a very rigorous, set of beliefs, right? And so it just feels more real. It feels more authentic, right? You don't feel like you're being tried to. It was Shia LaBeouf. When Shia LaBeouf actually converted to Catholicism, one of the things that he said was, I felt like going to this Latin mass, I felt like I wasn't being sold a car, because that's how his experience going to the masses outside of that had been. It felt like he was being sold a car. The priest was trying to make jokes and all these other things. And it's like, no, like just give me the worship, right? Because I know religion's been brought up a lot, and I think it's important, right? Religion is defined in this way: it's the highest moral virtue, since it disposes us to offer to God the worship that is due to Him. I think it's important for us to realize that religion is not specifically about just a certain set of beliefs. It's actually a virtue. It's actually it's a way in which we practice justice. We owe God worship by justice. Justice demands this, right? And so religion is the way in which we practice that justice.
I don't want to see. I don't need to see all the gimmicky. We'll give you a hot dog if you take this shot. I mean, if you come to this church. But like, you shouldn't have to tempt me with all that stuff. I completely feel that, what he was saying about being sold a car. Yeah. Okay. ADL 1992 for $4.99. Thank you for the super chat. Says, I'm skeptical of Bram because he was accused of sexual misconduct just prior that, and videos analyzing his narcissism. Well, hey, I haven't seen those accusations, so I can't speak to that, but I'll say something. Narcissism is something that all humans struggle with. Some live fully in that place. That's when you get diagnosed with NPD. But you see it in varying degrees, like any of those what are called cluster B personality disorders. All of those toxic traits are things that all humans have experienced to a varying degree or another. And I think of celebrities, you're going to see a little more of that, and I think he's even open about it. And so it just means that's something that he has to struggle with more. Like Randy said in his super chat earlier, for celebrities, ego, right? Kanye West is a great example of that, and we have a question here about that. Let me see if I can find it. I marked it because it was a good question. I know you guys have to go, so okay, last one. Mr. Generation, the question is, what about Kanye? Is he a lost cause, or should people be fighting for him or praying for him? Right?
No one's a lost cause. No one's ever a lost cause.
Right. No one's irredeemable. That's the whole point of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
No one's irredeemable.
I think even outside of religion, like, you should never give up on someone. Like, I mean, just for the sake of, I wouldn't want to be given up on, if there's something, I don't know, to me it makes sense.
Yeah.
I have to work on that. Speaking of problems, there's some people I've completely given up on.
Yeah.
I know I laugh about it, but seriously, it's that whole forgiveness conversation we had.
Yeah. It's hard.
I know. And I know that's whatever that thing is that you have it, that's one way that Satan tempts me.
But praying for somebody or hoping that they turn their life around is not the same as having to put yourself in company with them.
That's true. And I do pray for my enemies, or try to.
Does anyone know if Pierce Taylor's comment is accurate? Because that's like kind of incredible if it is. He says he says Islam has collapsed in Iran. For example, 2/3 of the mosque have closed. Does anyone know if that's true?
I don't, but I know that in Iran, most of the people in Iran, from all reports, are completely not behind what the actual religious government is doing. The theocracy in Iran. So it wouldn't surprise me. It's not the people in Iran who are shouting death to America. It's the government.
Your average Patriot nerd gave a $1.99 super sticker. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here and hanging out. I had a couple more, but we got to go. So I just had the others were comments, some funny comments in the chat. You guys always crack me up, and like Shag said, I love there's so many different viewpoints here. Thanks for being here. Do you guys want to say goodbye and tell people where they can find you and anything you want to promote that you have coming up you're excited about?
Yeah, you can find me and my sister at Force of Light Entertainment on YouTube, also Twitter and Instagram, and we're going to be reviewing the new movie, The Fall Guy. So you can check that out tomorrow. That will be posted.
For me, you can find me on my YouTube channel, The Shagsworth. I have a show tonight, The Midweek Hump, which we do every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time, which is 9:30 p.m. Central Time, if that's where you guys are. We just talk pop culture, entertainment, some politics when we want. And then actually Thursday, I get to interview Gary from Nerdrotic. So he'll be over on my stream for Ready, Set, Shag. So make sure you guys check that out. That'll be at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time as well, 9:30 Central. So, but yeah, come on over. I love talking to people, keeping an open mind. I'm a truth seeker, and maybe one day, guys, I'll be here as a true blue believer.
I believe it.
Thank you.
I'll believe that start time when it happens, by the way.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. You can find me, though, at OMB Reviews on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble. And also, I do make rosaries and give them away for free. So, especially with the show tonight, if you have any interest in that, just check out my website, ombreviews.com, and there's a rosary request form that you can fill out.
Odin gave me a rosary, and I love it. It's my travel rosary.
Yeah, he said me too. They're both beautiful. I love them.
Somehow I've missed the rosary each time that I've met Odin, and it's been 2 or 3 times.
Man, he doesn't love you as much as us.
I guess. My channel is Brahmable. Main thing that I've got going on is Saturday nights we do Bourbon and Boarding, and that is a hockey show. And we just entered the playoffs for the NHL, and we're actually having some of the series wind up yesterday, tonight, and tomorrow. So we're getting into the full tilt of it. So if you like hockey and just want to hear some people talk about something they actually like for once, come on over and say hi.
Thank you, guys. I love everyone on this panel. Thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for everyone in the chat being so gracious. And we'll see you guys in a couple weeks for another one of these. If you like it, hit like. Take care.
Night, everybody.
Bye.
God bless.
Bye.